Have you ever looked at your bank or investment account and wondered why it feels like you're doing everything right, yet nothing seems to change? You save, you invest, you stay consistent, but the progress feels slow and almost pointless. Then you hear stories about people whose money suddenly starts growing faster than their paycheck, and you wonder what they did differently. Was it luck, timing, or some secret strategy no one explained to you? What if the real difference isn't how much you earn, but when your money starts working harder than you do? What if there are specific points where the math shifts and everything begins to feel easier instead of harder? Most people never realize these moments exist, so they quit right before things start to change. Keep watching as I uncover the 3 net worth milestones that change everything. Think about someone you know who's saving. Maybe it's Aisha, who tucks away $400 a month into a retirement account. Maybe it's Jamal, who manages to set aside $700 a month while juggling a mortgage. Maybe it's Lena, who has been adding $600 monthly to a mix of index funds and bond funds. Different people, different amounts, different lives. But the math works the same way for all of them. Here are the 3 points I want you to understand. They're not mystical. They're practical turning points where the arithmetic of investing changes the game. First turning point, when the account balance hits about $75,000. Second turning point, when you pass roughly $450,000. Third turning point, when you cross $2 million. Those numbers are chosen on purpose. They're different from the usual list you've heard, and they come with real timelines and sensible assumptions so you can picture what it would actually look like in your life. Let's start with Aisha. She puts $400 into the market every month. That's $4,800 a year. She's not living on ramen and she's not skipping family events. She just makes the monthly deposit and forgets about it. Using a realistic long-term return of 6% a year with monthly compounding, she reaches about $75,000 in a little over 11 years. 11 years of routine decisions, not heroic sacrifices, just consistency. Here's what that first $75,000 usually feels like. Most of the money in that account still came from Aisha's deposits. In the early years, you are doing most of the work, but by the time she hits $75,000, the market has contributed roughly $22,000 of growth, while her own contributions add up to about $53,000. That's the moment the mechanics are changing. The growth part is now a real, measurable chunk of the total. It's not life-changing yet, but it's the point where the system proves it works. Why does that matter psychologically? Because up until then, people get discouraged. You keep feeding the account, and the balance rises slowly. You start thinking you're wasting effort. The first milestone proves that your monthly habit is not just bookkeeping. It's building a base that lets compound growth begin to show up. It's the completion of the hardest leg of the climb. You've put in the years. The slope is about to get steeper. Now picture Jamal. He's in his late 30s, saving $700 a month and earning a 7% average annual return. He's disciplined, but not obsessive. Using those numbers, Jamal will reach about $450,000 in roughly 22.25 years. That's a long time, sure, but compare it to how long it would take without the returns doing heavy work. When he hits the $450,000 mark, more than half the value will be market growth. His contributions plus the returns are both visible, and the returns are no longer a rounding error. That $450,000 milestone is meaningful for 3 reasons. First, it moves you from I'm saving into I'm producing real passive cash flow. If someone applies a conservative withdrawal approach, say a 4% annual withdrawal rule, $450,000 would theoretically produce around $18,000 per year. That's not enough to cover a full household budget in most places, but it's a serious supplement. It's money you don't need to earn by trading hours for dollars. Second, at that level, you stop making major financial decisions from panic. Losing a job becomes a setback you can absorb without immediate catastrophe. Third, and maybe most practically, you can take more considered risks. Want to start a side business without quitting your job? You can. Want to go back to school for a year? You can. Want to help a family member with a down payment? You can. Those are real choices, not just pie-in-the-sky ideas. Lena's example shows how the same mechanics change with a slightly different setup. She saves $600 a month and gets lucky with the market. Or more accurately, she invests in a mix that returns an average of about 8% a year. At that rate, she hits $450,000 in roughly 22 and a half years, too. A better return shortens the journey if you keep your contributions constant. You don't need to double your savings overnight. Improving the return by a point or two has a big impact over decades. Now, the third turning point, $2 million. That's the place where lifestyle choices, risk appetite, and time horizon suddenly feel very different. For Marco, the narrator who only has limited capital when he started, hitting $2 million requires patience and steady habits. But it's achievable. If someone like Aisha continues contributing $400 a month at 6%, that $2 million target will take a very long time, more than 54 years, in fact. That's longer than most careers. But if you increase monthly contributions or find higher average returns, that timeline shrinks a lot. For instance, Jamal, with $700 a month and a 7% average return, would reach $2 million in about 41 years. That's a career worth of disciplined action, long but not impossible. The key is that once you hit that level, the math gives you options few people have. Imagine $2 million producing a 4% annual income. That's $80,000 every year. That number matters. It buys freedom to pick a job because you want to, not because you must. It buys the chance to move to a new city, do part-time work, or run a business with a much longer runway. It buys choices that change day-to-day life. Let's walk through how the math shifts across these milestones in plain terms. In the early phase, the progress is mostly your deposits. Compound growth plays catch-up. Emotionally, that's the ugly phase. But you're laying the ground floor. That first $75,000 proves the pattern. The next leg is where the growth starts to win more of the battle. From $75,000 to $450,000, market returns are doing a larger share of the work. By the time the account reaches $450,000, a significant part of the balance is growth on growth, not just deposits. After $450,000, the story becomes simpler to tell. Each year, your money returns an amount that itself makes more money next year. That's the loop. Every dollar starts to carry the potential of multiple future dollars. The longer you leave it alone, the more that potential compounds. Now, I want to make this personal. Picture 4 short real-life sketches. First sketch, Aisha, 29, single, tech job, $400 per month into low-cost broad market funds, 6% average return. She keeps a simple budget, skips an upgrade to a brand new car that she doesn't need, and automates her contributions. 11 years in, she hits $75,000. For a while, she just sleeps better. She's not rich, but she sees evidence that small, repeatable choices add up. At year 15, she's around $120,000. Year 25, she's well into numbers that allow real debate about early retirement or a career pivot. Second sketch. Jamal, 36, married with 2 kids, $700 per month into a balanced portfolio, 7% average return. He keeps working, occasionally freelances, invests bonuses instead of spending them. Around year 10 or 12, his balance feels real to him. He hits $450,000 around year 22. He still works, but now has breathing room. He can say yes to an opportunity without panic or say no to a toxic job without fear. He starts thinking about investments beyond funds, a small rental, some seed investments with friends. He can afford to fail sometimes without catastrophic impact. Third sketch. Lisa, 45, late saver. She didn't start until 35 because life made it hard. She can only add $500 a month, but she pushes extra when she can. She targets higher yield bonds and a few growth funds, averaging around 7.5% returns. She reaches $450,000 closer to year 24, later than she hoped, but not impossible. Her story is a reminder. Starting later narrows choices, but the system still works. Fourth sketch. Marco's neighbor, Tony, saved $1,000 a month since his 20s and invested aggressively, getting lucky with compounding and an 8% average. Tony's on track for $2 million by his early 60s. He's not flashy, he doesn't drive a sports car, he eats decent food. The point isn't Tony's discipline alone. It's the combined effect of steady contributions and compounded returns amplified over decades. Numbers tell the story better than slogans. So here are clear, realistic facts you can use to compare paths. If you put aside $400 a month and average a 6% annual return, you reach approximately $75,000 in about 11 years, approximately $450,000 in about 31.6 years, approximately $2 million in about 54.4 years. If you increase the contribution to $700 a month and average a 7% annual return, the timeline moves to roughly $450,000 in about 22.3 years, roughly $2 million in about 41.1 years. If you instead save $600 a month and average 8%, you'll reach $450,000 in roughly 22.5 years. See the pattern? Higher contributions and higher returns both shorten the time, and raising either variable can make a big difference over long time frames. You may be thinking, those timelines are long. Yes, that's the point. This is a decades game. If you want instant results, you'll find scams and noise. If you want steady, reliable outcomes, you'll accept time as a tool. Let's tackle common pushbacks. What about inflation? Great question. Inflation reduces buying power over time, but compound interest can outpace inflation if you invest in assets with real returns above inflation. If your portfolio returns 6% and inflation averages 2.5% over the long haul, your real return is 3.5%. That means wealth grows above inflation and your purchasing power improves. That's why the focus shouldn't be nominal balances alone, but real outcomes. How much after-inflation income or living standard your investments can support. But markets crash. Right again. Crashes are part of the process. They're not a bug. They're a feature if you're putting money to work over time. When prices fall, your monthly contributions buy more shares. If you stay consistent, downturns become opportunities. Historically, markets recover over long periods. That's not a promise, but a historical pattern. That's also why diversification is practical. It reduces the chance that a single failure ruins your whole plan. How much will I be able to spend without running out? People like simple rules. The 4% rule is one of them. It says, if you can withdraw 4% a year from your portfolio, adjusted for inflation, you're likely to avoid running out for several decades. At $450,000, 4% is $18,000 a year. At $2 million, 4% is $80,000 a year. You don't need to memorize the rule. Use it to think about scale. If the goal is replacing a full-time income, you'll need a larger balance. If the goal is supplementing income to reduce stress and boost options, a figure like $450,000 can be transformational for some households. Can I do this while living a normal life? Yes. The examples show people who continue to do normal things, go on vacations, own cars, support families. The difference is choices. Saving $400 instead of $800 makes a big difference in growth. But saving $400 consistently does more in the long run than saving $1,000 sporadically and trying to time the market. The discipline is not a life sentence of deprivation. It's a habit you build and refine. What about other paths? Real estate, businesses, side hustles. Those can accelerate the timeline. They also carry different risks and time commitments. Buying a rental property with leverage can amplify returns, but it also amplifies losses and requires management. Starting a business can produce huge returns or fail completely. The conservative path we've outlined, regular contributions to broadly diversified funds, is not the only route, but it is low cost in time and complexity and has a track record that fits many people's needs. Now, some practical steps you can take after watching this. First, automate. If you're tempted to skip a month, automation prevents that temptation from becoming a habit. Set contributions to come out on payday. You'll hardly miss what you never see. Second, keep costs low. Fees matter. Over decades, small percentage points in fees compound against you. Use low-cost index funds or ETFs where possible. Third, rebalance occasionally. Rebalancing keeps your risk level where you planned it. If a big run makes your equity exposure higher than intended, sell some equities and buy bonds or cash to get back to your target mix. Fourth, build a simple emergency fund. This prevents you from selling investments at the worst possible time. 3 to 6 months of reasonable expenses is a useful cushion. If this video was helpful, please like it and subscribe for more clear, practical content like this. Let me know in the comments which milestone you're aiming for, and I'll see you in the next video.